The fog was thick like milk, rolling between the black trees of the alien jungle. It covered everything, made the air cold and wet, and hid the sounds of danger, but not all sounds. One sound cut through it clearly: a scream, sharp and full. Of fear. It was not from a beast, not from a monster. It came from a young alien girl. Running for her life, Yellori's thin feet slapped against the muddy ground. Slipping on wet roots, her chest burned, her legs shook, and her eyes were wide with terror behind her. Loud growls and heavy footsteps echoed through the trees. The beasts were close, closer than ever. She had escaped the slave caravan only a few hours ago. Now the wild moon itself seemed ready to eat her alive. She turned sharply around a tree, ducking under hanging vines. Her lungs cried for air. But she couldn't stop. If she did, they'd tear her apart. These were not simple hunters. These beasts had tasted flesh before, and they were fast, hungry, and cruel. Suddenly, her foot caught on a rock. She fell hard, sliding down a short hill. Rolling through dead leaves and mud, she landed at the base of a broken tree. Her ankle twisted. Pain shot up her leg. She tried to move. But the pain was too sharp, too much. She could hear them coming. Hear their growls growing louder. Tears ran down her face as she tried to crawl backward. "Please," she whispered. "Please, no." A shadow moved in the fog. Something large and fast. Then another. Red eyes blinked from the mist, glowing with hunger. Yellori screamed again, weak and broken. She had no weapon, no shield, no hope. And then, light. A sudden burst of red light exploded in front of her. It was a flare, hissing and burning, cutting. Through the fog like fire, the beasts paused, their growls turning into confused snarls. They backed away slightly, their eyes blinking faster, and out of the fog. A figure appeared, tall, armored, and holding a glowing rod in one hand and a long knife in the other. A human, he stepped between her and the beasts without hesitation. His eyes scanned the shadows quickly, calm but deadly. The beasts growled louder now, circling, testing him. The human didn't move, didn't run. He just waited, breathing slow and steady. Yellori stared up at him in shock. Why was a human here, on this moon, in this jungle? Why did he stop to help her? She was nothing to him, just another alien girl on the run, but still. He stood in front of her like a wall, like a shield. The biggest beast leaped from the side, claws out, mouth wide. The human spun and slammed the rod into its side. A burst of electric light exploded from the strike, throwing the beast back into the trees. It yelped and vanished into the mist. Another came from behind. But the human moved like lightning. He ducked low and drove his knife deep into its chest. The creature screamed and fell, twitching on the ground. The rest growled and backed away slowly, one by one. Their glowing red eyes faded into the fog. Gone. For a moment, the jungle was silent again. Only the sound of the flare burning and Yellori's shaky breath remained. The human turned to her, eyes scanning her face quickly. "You hurt?" he asked in a flat but kind voice. Yellori opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. She was shaking too much to answer. He didn't wait. He bent down and gently lifted her into his arms. She was light, almost weightless. He began walking into the fog with steady steps, each one sure and strong. She clung to his armor without meaning to, her body too weak to resist. "Safe now," he said quietly. Almost like a promise. Yellori looked up at him, her vision blurred by tears. She had never seen a human before, not this close. He had scars on his face, a short beard, and eyes that looked both tired and kind. The light of the flare slowly faded behind them as they walked deeper into the jungle, but away from death. In the distance, a beast howled once more, but it did not follow. Not tonight. Tonight, the jungle had seen something stranger than its monsters, a human who stood alone and fought to save a girl he didn't even know. Asterisk, the shelter was dark, hidden under a rock ledge covered in thick moss and hanging roots. Inside, the air was warm from a small, controlled flame burning in the center. Yalari blinked slowly as she opened her eyes. The pain in her ankle, still sharp, but not as bad as before. She tried to sit up, but a rough hand gently pushed her back down. "Don't move too much," the human said. His voice low but steady. He was crouched beside her, fixing a metal brace around her ankle with careful hands. His armor was scratched and dirty. Parts of it clearly handmade or repurposed. She stared at him, her heart still beating too fast, too scared to speak, too confused to understand why she was alive. He didn't look at her much, just worked on her ankle like he had done it 100 times before. Around them, the walls of the shelter were made from ship scraps, vine-wrapped stone, and broken machine parts. It looked like someone had built it with bare hands and years of quiet work outside. The sound of beasts howling in the distance reminded her they were still out there, still hunting. Finally, he spoke again. "Name's Raiden," he said, not expecting her to answer, but giving the name anyway. She hesitated, then whispered Yalair. Her voice cracked, her throat dry. He passed her a metal flask, and she drank slowly, tasting clean water for the first time in days. "You were lucky," he said, sitting down against the far wall. "They usually don't stop once they've started tracking someone." She watched him in the dim light, the flicker of fire dancing over the lines of his face. He looked tired, but alert, as if he hadn't really slept in a long time. He didn't ask her why she was in the jungle, didn't press for answers. That made her trust him more. Just a little. She tried to thank him, but he waved it off. "Get rest," he said. "You'll need your strength if you're gonna make it through another night out there." That last part made her heart sink again. Another night? Was this not over? Hours passed quietly. Raiden didn't sleep. He sharpened a blade using a stone, checked traps on a handheld screen, and listened. Two sounds in the dark with one ear always pointed outward. Yalari couldn't rest, her mind spinning with fear and questions. Why did he save her? Why was a human living here? This moon was known as a death zone. Even smugglers avoided it. At some point, she stood slowly, using the wall for balance. Raiden looked up, but didn't stop her. She limped to the edge of the shelter, looked out into the mist beyond the vines. It looked peaceful now, silent, almost beautiful. But she knew better. It was a trap, like still water hiding sharp rocks underneath. Behind her, Raiden spoke quietly. "You run again. You won't make it." She turned to him, surprised. He wasn't angry, just telling the truth. "Why would you care?" she asked, her voice small but sharper than before. He shrugged, still watching the fog outside. "You needed help. That was it. No long story, no deep reason. Just a simple answer, like it was the most natural thing in the universe." She didn't know what to say to that. Suddenly, a soft beep came from one of the devices near the door. Raiden stood fast, grabbed his rifle, moved to the edge, his body tense, eyes locked onto the screen. Yalari moved closer, her pulse rising again. Something was moving near the outer traps. Not one of the beasts. It was something heavier, smarter. The screen showed heat movement, two signatures walking upright. Raiden cursed under his breath. "Scanners," he muttered. "They're searching the area." "Who?" Yalari asked, already afraid of the answer. Raiden didn't look at her. "The kind of people who don't want witnesses." He shut off the small fire, moved quickly through the shelter, covering heat sources, hiding metal that could reflect light. She helped, her body acting faster than her thoughts. The fear of the beasts returned, but this was worse. This was organized, dangerous, and very likely deadly. Raiden handed her a short blade. If they find us, don't wait for me to tell you to run." Her hands trembled as she took it. Her whole life she had been weak, trapped, owned by others. But this man, this stranger, was giving her a weapon and trusting her to survive. Outside, a soft humming filled the air. Not beast growls this time, but engines. Yellari held her breath as faint lights began to pass over the trees. Blue search. Beams cutting through the jungle fog like swords. Raiden crouched beside her, whispering just loud enough for her to hear. "If they see us, we don't fight to win. We fight to disappear." Yellari nodded slowly. No longer the same frightened girl who had fallen in the mud hours ago. Something was changing, not just around her, but inside her too. She didn't know it yet, but tonight was just the beginning. Yellari waited until the jungle lights disappeared, her body tense. Her fingers wrapped tightly around the blade Raiden had given her. She had stayed hidden all night, pressed close to the back wall of the shelter, listening to every sound, every breath, but morning never really came on this moon. Only a pale gray sky that looked sick and heavy. The fog never left, only thinned a little. Raiden hadn't spoken much since the patrol ship passed overhead. He was quiet now, packing a small bag with supplies, adjusting the straps on his gear, checking a strange-looking device that hummed with a slow pulse. Yellari stood in the corner, unsure, confused, afraid to ask what came next. "We move," Raiden said at last. "The shelter's burned. They'll check here again." Yellari didn't argue, didn't speak, just followed. Her ankles still hurt, but the brace helped. She limped after him into the thick jungle, her heart thudding in her chest with every step. Her mind told her to stay, to rest, but her gut knew the truths. Staying meant death. They moved for hours, pushing through thick vines, ducking under twisted branches, sometimes crawling on hands and knees. Raiden moved like he had done this 1,000 times, like the forest obeyed him. But Yellari kept tripping, falling, her body weak, her vision blurry from hunger and fear. Suddenly, she stopped, her breath caught in her throat. In the mud ahead of them were prints, big ones, deep and fresh, not like the beasts from before. These were different, clawed but careful, like whatever made them was smart, not just hungry. Raiden crouched beside the prince and ran a finger over the edge. "Stalkers," he said softly, "fast, silent. They travel in pairs." Yellari's hands began to shake again. She had heard stories of stalkers when she was a child. Tales told to keep little ones from wandering too far, but the stories were true. Raiden changed direction immediately. They didn't follow the path anymore. They started climbing, up toward a higher ridge where the fog was thinner. The climb was brutal, the stones slippery, the vines sharp. Yellari's arms ached, her hands bled. But she didn't stop. At the top, they found an old outpost, broken and half-buried in green moss. Raiden pushed open a rusted door and led her inside. The metal walls were cold and silent. The air smelled of dust and oil. He sealed the door behind them with a click that echoed through the chamber. "This place was a survey station," he said. "Abandoned after the wildlife got too dangerous." He pulled out a datapad and wiped it clean, trying to power it up while Yellari sank to the floor, exhausted, her back against the wall. She watched him for a while, not speaking. Her eyes drifted to a broken window, through which she could see the jungle below, moving like a living creature. Something in her chest tightened. A feeling she couldn't name, maybe fear, maybe something deeper. Without warning, she stood, walked to the door, and unlatched the seal. Raiden looked up sharply. "What are you doing?" "I can't stay," she said. "I don't belong here. I'm just slowing you down." His eyes narrowed. He stood slowly, walked to her, and shut the door again, locking it tight. "You want to die?" he asked flatly. "Because out there, that's what happens. You run, they find you." And this time I won't be there to stop it. She stared at him, her eyes burning with shame and anger. Why are you helping me? She whispered. You don't even know me. Raiden's face stayed hard for a moment, then softened slightly. You screamed, he said. Someone screamed, and I had the power to stop it. Yellowry turned away, tears forming again. But not from fear this time. She hated feeling helpless, hated needing anyone. But part of her knew he was right. She wouldn't survive alone, not in this place. Not with stalkers moving like shadows in the mist. Night began to fall again, the weak sky turning darker. Raiden set traps around the broken station, tied wires across the entrance, and placed sensors along the ridge. Yellowry watched him work, memorizing every move, every tool, every trick. She didn't ask questions now, she just paid attention. Something deep inside her finally beginning to change. That night, she didn't sleep. She sat by the broken window, blade in her lap, eyes on the jungle, waiting, not just for danger, but for the moment she could be more than just someone needing to be saved. She didn't know how or when, but she made a silent promise. One day, she would protect someone too, the way Raiden had protected her. Even if it killed her, she just didn't. No, that promise would be tested far sooner than she expected. Yellowry didn't ask questions in the morning. She simply followed, not because she was weak anymore, because she wanted to learn how Raiden moved, how he survived, how he thought like a hunter in a jungle of monsters. Her ankles still hurt, but she didn't complain, she barely limped. Now, something about the fear, or maybe something deeper, had pushed her body into ignoring the pain. They moved through the ruins of another old facility. This one nearly swallowed by trees and roots, broken glass crunched under their feet. Faded human letters covered the rusted walls, but one word Yellowry could read clearly: evacuated. She looked at it for a moment, wondering if anyone else had tried to stay behind like Raiden, or if they had all run. Leaving this moon to the beasts and shadows, Raiden didn't say much. He had grown quieter since the patrol ship passed overhead 2 nights ago. She had caught him standing alone more than once, staring up at the sky as if waiting for something to return, or maybe hoping it wouldn't. There were old ghosts in his silence, ones he hadn't told her about, but she could feel them hanging around him like old clothes he refused to take off. That evening, as they sat near a small fire inside a hidden cave, she finally asked, "Why are you really here?" Raiden didn't answer at first, just stared into the fire like he could see another world in the flames. Then he said, "I was left behind." His voice was low, the words heavy. Part of a science team. They said they'd come back. They didn't. Yellowry looked at him with wide eyes. "They just abandoned you." He nodded once, slowly, said the moon was unstable, too dangerous. They left in a hurry, didn't even take all their equipment. He pulled something from his belt, a broken comlink, old and cracked. "I tried calling for months. No reply. Eventually, I stopped trying." She didn't speak, didn't know what to say, 'cause for the first time, she realized he wasn't just brave or strong, he was alone, completely, painfully alone. Not for a day or two, but for years. And now, she asked softly, "Do you want to leave?" Raiden shrugged. Used to dream about it every day. Now, Tono. Not sure what's left up there for someone like me. There was a long pause, the fire crackling softly, the wind outside brushing against the cave like it didn't dare come in. Yellowry leaned forward, her voice quiet. "Maybe the sky forgot you, but I won't." Raiden looked at her, his face unreadable for a moment. Then he nodded once, like her words meant more than she would ever understand. But peace never lasted long on this moon. The moment came in the middle of the night, not with a roar, but with silence. Yellowry woke to a strange stillness, the kind that made your skin crawl before your ears could hear it. Raiden was already up his back against the cave wall, rifle in hand, breathing slow and shallow. "They're here," he whispered. "The stalkers found us." Yellari reached for her blade without thinking. Her hands shaking, but not from fear. This time it was fire. Burning from somewhere inside her chest. She didn't want to hide again. Not anymore. Not after all she had seen. Not after what he had told her. Raiden pointed to the back exit of the cave, a tunnel that led to the cliffs. "We move now." They slipped into the tunnel, footsteps quiet on the stone. The darkness, thick but familiar. Yellari could feel the change inside her. She wasn't prey anymore. She was learning, adapting, and she knew, without needing proof, that the beasts behind them were doing the same. Halfway through the tunnel, a sharp metal click echoed behind them. Raiden froze, then shoved Yellari forward. "Run, now." She didn't question him. She ran. Every step sending pain up her leg, but she kept going. The tunnel narrowed, the air thinned, and behind her she heard gunfire. 1, 2 shots, then silence again. Yellari turned the corner and burst out onto the cliff edge. Gasping for air, the view stretched for miles. Jungle, mountains, and in the far distance, smoke, black and rising. Not natural, not wild. It looked like a signal. Or a burning ship. Raiden appeared beside her, breathing heavy, a gash across his arm bleeding fast. "We need shelter," he said, pointing to a nearby ledge with a small overhang. She helped him move, pulling him with strength she didn't know she had. They reached the ledge and collapsed, both of them shaking, both bleeding, both alive for now. Yellari looked out across the sky again, her heart pounding, her thoughts loud. She realized something. In that moment, something terrifying and powerful. This place wasn't just trying to kill them. It was testing them, and it was far from finished. Asterisk. Yellari opened her eyes to the sound of dripping water and distant thunder. But it wasn't rain from the sky. It was coming from the jungle below. Something large moving through the trees, too slow to be wind, too heavy to be a stalker. The fog was returning, thicker than before. Like the moon itself was warning them to disappear again. Raiden lay against the rocky ledge. His eyes half closed, the bleeding from his arm mostly stopped thanks to a crude bandage Yellari had wrapped with strips from her own cloak. He hadn't said much since they escaped the tunnel, but his breathing was steady, his hand always close to his weapon. Even in sleep, she moved carefully around him, searching the edge of the cliff for any movement, her knife ready, her heart tight in her chest. For the first time since her capture, she didn't feel like someone who needed to be protected. She felt like a protector. Then she saw it, a trail in the trees below. Not broken branches or crushed grass. This was cleaner, sharper, a line of red cutting through green. Fresh blood, and lots of it. She crouched, watching the path twist between trees like a vein through flesh. Whatever left that trail wasn't trying to hide. It was trying to send a message. She looked back at Raiden, still resting, unaware. She made a choice then, a quiet one. She needed to know what left that trail, not just for safety, but because her gut told her the answer mattered more than she could guess. She slid down the slope, silent as she could, the fog hiding her but also swallowing sound. She followed the blood through thick ferns and dark trunks until she found Ada drone. Smashed into a tree half buried in mud, its signal lights still blinking red. Barely, its metal was torn apart, deep claw marks running from the camera lens down to its core. Yellari stepped closer, then stopped, her breath caught in her throat. Next to the drone, hanging from a tree branch, was a small tag, still dripping with blood. And on it, a human name, burned into metal. Raiden Kells. She reached for it, hand trembling, but before her fingers touched it, something growled from behind her. She turned slowly, her knife tight in her hand. A shape moved in the fogno, 2 shapes. Their eyes glowed gold, not red. Their skin was dark and smooth, and they didn't growl like beasts. They clicked like insects with teeth. Long limbs bent backward, heads tilted unnaturally, watching. Her, studying her Yulari, didn't wait. She turned and ran, her feet pounding through wet earth. The fog swirling around her, branches cutting her arms. Pain racing through her ankle again. Behind her, she heard them move fast. Too fast. She didn't scream. Not this time. She knew better now. Her breath was short, her body burning. But she didn't stop. She had to reach Raiden, had to warn. Him had to survive. She scrambled up the slope, her hands bloody from grabbing sharp rock, her arms shaking, and then she saw him, Raiden, already standing, weapon in hand. He must have heard her coming, or maybe he just never really slept. "What's behind you?" he asked as she stumbled toward him. "Not beasts," she gasped. Something worse, that was all he needed. He moved fast, pressing buttons on a small device he pulled from his belt. 3 tiny blinking dots activated on the ridge. Yulari watched as strange metal shapes unfolded near the cliff traps. Smart ones, old but still deadly. The creatures appeared moments later. Sliding through the fog-like shadows wearing skin, they didn't attack right away. They waited, testing, learning. One stepped forward, its head tilting again, and then it spoke. "You're not alone anymore," it said in broken, gurgling human speech. He's marked. Raiden's eyes narrowed. "Tell your masters I'm still alive," he said coldly, "and I don't die easy." The creature hissed, took one step forward, and the trap exploded, sending a burst of shrapnel and flame. Into the trees, the creature screamed and vanished into the smoke. The other fled, clicking wildly, disappearing into the fog like rats from fire. Raiden and Yulari didn't speak for a moment, just listened, making sure the forest was silent again. Finally, Yulari handed him the tag she had taken, her hand shaking. "Again, they know you," she said. "They marked you." Raiden looked down at the tag, his face cold, unreadable. "I thought they forgot," he whispered, "but they never did." Yulari stared at him, voice barely a whisper. "Who are you really?" He didn't answer. Not fully, but he looked her in the eyes and said something she would never forget. "I'm the reason this moon still has secrets." And with that, the fog thickened once more, and the night began to fall, colder than before. Sharper, they didn't know it yet, but something terrible had been set in motion. Something that neither beast nor jungle could stop now. Yulari sat beside the low fire, her fingers pressed against her own skin. Tracing scars she'd never noticed until now, her body had healed in places. But something inside her was still broken, not because of the beasts or the jungle, but because she knew she wasn't meant to survive any of this. And yet, she had, because of one man. Raiden stood at the edge of the cliff again, his eyes locked on the distant smoke still rising from where the drone had burned. He had said nothing since he saw his name on that bloodied tag, but his silence spoke louder than anything else. Something was shifting in him, like old walls cracking after too long in the rain. When the sunless sky dimmed again, Raiden finally turned to her, his voice lower than ever. "Tonight, they'll come in numbers." Yulari looked at him with wide eyes. "Then we leave." He shook his head once. "Slowly, we make a stand." She didn't ask why. Not anymore. She understood something now. This wasn't just about survival. Not for Raiden. There was something here he was protecting. Something buried under the jungle, under memories, under secrets too heavy to carry alone. And she was part of it now, whether she liked it or not. Together, they moved quickly, setting charges, building traps, crafting a defense from old tech and sharpened metal. Raiden handed her a small pulse blade short range, silent, deadly, aimed for the throat. He said, "Don't freeze." She nodded, her hand steady, even though her heart wasn't. She had never held a real weapon before coming here. Now, it felt natural in her grip, as if the jungle had shaped her into someone new. By nightfall, the ridge looked empty, but deadly. Wires hidden under leaves, pressure pads behind loose stones, motion-triggered darts hanging from vines. Raiden moved like he was building something familiar, like he'd done this before, like war was just another old friend from his past. As they waited in silence, Yellowry whispered, "What did you do before you were left here?" Raiden didn't answer right away. Then he said, "I designed failsafes." She frowned, confused. Failsafes. He looked at her, his eyes tired, his voice hollow. Weapons meant to stop things if they got out of control. She felt her skin go cold, like the stalkers. Raiden nodded once. "They weren't born here," he said. "They were made." Yellowry stared at him. Her breath caught in her chest. "You helped build them." "No," he said quickly. "I helped stop them, or tried to." The fog crept in again. Slower this time, thicker, heavier, like it was holding its breath. And then came the clicking sounds. Hundreds of them. From every direction, the stalkers were back, but not just 2 or 3. It was a full pack. Raiden didn't move. He sat still beside the fire and closed his eyes. Yellowry crouched near him. "Blade ready? Are we going to make it?" she asked, her voice thin. He opened his eyes slowly. "Not if we fight like prey." The creature struck just after midnight, fast and low, teeth sharp, bodies bending unnaturally through the vines. The traps triggered with bursts of fire, and sparks, explosions ripping through the trees. Burning silhouettes flashing in the dark, but more kept coming, leaping over the dead. Screaming in broken voices, Yellowry fought. Her blade moving faster than she thought possible, her mind focused, her body no longer her own. She ducked, stabbed, turned, blocked. Blood hot on her arms, but not hers. She didn't run, not once, not this time. Raiden fought beside her like a ghost of war.com and violent, every move ending a threat, but his side slowed, his wounded arm heavy. And one stalker got too close, slashing across his ribs, knocking him down hard. Yellowry screamed his name and dove forward, driving her blade into the creature's chest. Again and again, until it stopped moving, until she was shaking, her hands soaked in black blood. Raiden tried to rise, but fell back, breath shallow. "Detonator," he gasped. "End it." She looked at him. Then at the small, blinking trigger. By his belt, the last trap, the one meant to destroy the ridge completely. "If I press it, we both die," she whispered. His voice was fading now. "If you don't, the whole moon dies next." She didn't understand, not fully. But her fingers moved anyway, hovering over the button. Her eyes burning with fear and pain and something else choice. The fog swirled tighter. The clicking sounds louder again. They were coming back fast, and she pressed it. Everything went white. Then red, then silence. A silence so deep it swallowed her. She didn't know if she was alive, or if she had just become part of the jungle forever. Light returned slowly, like dawn behind closed eyes. But it wasn't sunrise, it was firelight, flickering on shattered trees and cracked stone. Yellowry opened her eyes to smoke hanging in the air like a heavy blanket. Everything around her broken. Scorched, silent, she lay on her side, the detonator still clenched in her hand. Her body numb, her ears ringing, her fingers twitched, her breath shaky. But she was alive, barely. She sat up slowly, her leg, her shoulder. Everything hurt, but she welcomed the pain it meant she still existed. The ridge was gone, most of it blown into dust and fire. The traps were ash, the jungle torn wide open, and in the center of it all, surrounded by dark blood and scattered limbs, was a quiet figure, motionless, Raiden. She crawled to him, each movement a scream inside her bones. Her hand reached his chest, searching for breath, heartbeat, anything. For a moment, there was nothing, just stillness. Then faint, so faint his chest rose, shallow but real. His skin was burned, bleeding. But his eyes opened, just barely, enough to see her face, to know she was still there, still fighting, even now. "You did it," he whispered, his voice dry like smoke. "You pressed it," Yalari nodded, tears slipping down her dirt-covered cheeks. "You said we had to," she whispered. "I believed you." He smiled, weak but proud. "Good soldier," he murmured. She wanted to laugh, but she was too tired, too broken. She leaned over him, holding his hand. "You're not dying," she said, even if she wasn't sure it was true. "I won't let you." From above, a deep rumble echoed through the sky. Not thunder, not beasts. It was metal, heavy and distant. Growing louder, a ship. Yalri turned her head, eyes wide. A massive shadow drifted through the clouds, its lights scanning the wreckage, then slowing, then stopping. The sky had returned, and it had brought company. Within minutes, figures in black suits descended from the craft. Weapons ready, masks glowing, they moved with military precision, sweeping the area. One of them knelt beside Yalari. Voice filtered through the helmet. "Identify?" She didn't answer. Only pointed to Raiden. "He's the one," she said. Quietly, he saved the moon. The soldier tapped something on his arm. "We have him," he said. "Confirmed ID. Raiden Kells, marked as deceased 6 years ago." Raiden coughed weakly. "Guess." "I missed the funeral." The med team moved fast, stabilizing him, lifting him into the evac pod. One of them offered Yellery a blanket, but she waved it off. She stood on her own now, shaky but proud, her knife still in her hand, her eyes no longer soft. She wasn't the same girl who had fallen in the mud that first night. Later, on the ship, cleaned and wrapped in bandages, she sat beside Raiden's recovery pod, watching the stars outside the glass. "They'll want to know everything," she said quietly, "about the stalkers, the program, what really happened here." Raiden's voice came through the speaker, faint but steady. "Then tell them, but tell them this too." She leaned closer. "What?" "That even in the darkest place, humanity doesn't stop," he whispered. "Not when it matters." She smiled through her tears. Not weak tears, but strong ones. The kind that come after surviving the impossible, as the ship rose higher into orbit, leaving the broken moon behind. Yallery looked out once more at the jungle that had nearly killed her, that had shaped her, tested her, and in the end, revealed her strength. She wasn't just a rescued girl now. She was proof that sometimes it only takes one human to change everything. And sometimes it takes one alien girl to remind that human why it's worth saving. Together, they left the fog behind, but what they carried forward would light the stars forever.